Could you tell me if you can hear me? I think I was cut off. There was a technical issue. So let me know. Perfect. Thank you, Luca. Got it. So yeah, let's begin. Let's begin the talk. What is a rare disease? Any disease that is rare is a rare disease. Of course, everybody knows that, but there is a proper definition to a rare disease, and it depends on which country you live in and how the regulations have defined it. So, in Europe, let's start with Europe. And a rare disease is defined by something that affects 1 in 2,000 citizens. It is at least 6 to 8% people in the entire world that are affected by a rare disease. At least 60 million people in US and Europe combined have a rare disease, and 300 million people worldwide. It can affect at any age, and mostly, I would say, at least 75% of the people of the affected population is children. Well, I would like to state that there is no conflict of interest of my numbers, because I'm not going to use the numbers from my firm. These are all the numbers that I have used from available online sources, authentic online sources. I would not be sharing the perfect numbers that we share with the clients. So yeah, I will always be approximate, but that's going to be enough to give the message. So the groups the indications that are mostly prevalent are metabolic, neuro, autoimmune, and so far you must have seen this sounds like genetic. So at least 50% of these rare diseases are genetic. There are cardiovascular problems, bleeding disorders. These are the major ones. So what do you mean in rare disease when you are in US? It is less than 200,000 individuals. In Canada, it's 5 in 10,000. So again, 1 in 2,000 people. Again, in EU, it is 1 in 2,000. Brazil, 1.3 in 2,000. Mexico, 1 in 2,000. Some characteristics of these rare diseases are they could be really deadly. They are chronic, progressive, degenerative, disabling, and frequently life-threatening. So patients are from different geographical areas, and experts are from different geographical areas. Unlike a common disease, let's say migraine, which affects a large population, and you want to know how you want to bring out a drug that can treat these migraine patients. You can bring them together, and you can treat them by running a few clinical trials or something. But when it comes to rare diseases, the first problem is that it is geographically scattered. It's difficult to bring a lot of people together. Then I just want to make sure that I am, the volume is fine, because I just got a comment that somebody is not able to hear. If I can get 2 people to comment, it's fine. Then let me move ahead, or I'll try something from my system. Is the volume all right? Just say yes or no. Perfect. So I would say what are the characteristics of these rare diseases is the research is fragmented. Fragmented, it means some part of it is here, some part of it is there. The reliable sources of information are less. There is sustainability issue. Resources are again limited. So what do we do? These are the characteristics. So there were put together some regulations in the US. It began in 83, and then European Union followed in 99, and these are some other countries that are also following regulations for rare disease and orphan drug development. Well, an orphan drug is a drug that is used to treat a rare disease. It's not a drug that is essential. It's not an essential medicine, but it is actually used to treat a specific population, and that is why this entire field, this entire industry is so big, because it is all down to orphan drug development. Some why rarity calls for an action at a global level. Well, we need to empower the at international level. We need to bring a lot of countries together. We need to do some trials together so that we can come to a consensus. And we need to support the countries that are, that have just begun the orphan drug development, and which lack economic support. So this is how the entire nations can get together and work for the same cause. What are the challenges? Of course, there's challenges. Every time there's a challenge. But with rare diseases, the challenges are massive. Every rare disease is different. There are 7,000 rare diseases. All of them are different, right? And again, I told you, people have different geographies. No two people look to, see see each other and say, well, we are same. So how do we get down to find how to treat these kind of people, how to treat these kind of diseases rather? Well, there are some commonalities, and these are in the development process of these orphan drugs. So in the 21st century, it has been a great success in the last 10 to 20 years in innovation, translational research, regulation. What we have been able to do is we have been able to enable more and more diagnosis. Each rare disease begins with a diagnosis. We want to bring more quality care, and we have brought innovative treatments to patients. We have been able to increase the flow of information, and we have been able to do some networking globally, and we have been able to make new partnerships. So what we are doing right now is also networking, sharing of information. So what are the essential steps to a drug development in a rare disease landscape? First of all, it is really important to understand the natural history of the disease. We need to identify the potential treatments. We need to conduct the clinical trials and then go for the approval. This is the fourth step, is the major step, approval of the treatment. Well, let's differentiate what an essential medicine is and what an orphan drug is, so that we are clear why it is different from the regular drugs. It's not like a painkiller medicine that we take. Why is it so different? So an Essential Medicine Act, the policy started in 1977, while orphan drugs policies came in a little late. The primary focus of essential medicines is public health and to bring effective medicines to as many patients as possible. Whereas in orphan drugs, it is about an individual patient. We want each individualized patient to get support and medicine personalized to that patient. Well, it was initiated, the essential medicines are initiated and developed by bigger organizations, while orphan drugs can be initiated and developed pertaining to the geography. US In US, the population is different. They can have a rare disease of their own. For example, I know some rare diseases that affect only Caucasians because of the genetics. Similarly, there are so many rare diseases that have different populations, that have different etiology. So it could originate from a country specific level. Then the criteria for essential drugs, it is a drug driven research, while the orphans is a disease driven research. Every disease is given importance, and the research begins with understanding the pathophysiology of the disease. Well, the policies for essentials they provide established medicines to patients, and in the orphan space, they provide new medicines to as yet untreatable patients. The target population is initially lower income or all the countries, while the orphan drugs have so far been tapped only in high income countries and slowly go to the developed countries. And I'll, give you uh, why this happens. Just give you a teaser of this. It's because of the patents, and you can hold that thought. What the patents, why the patents have a big role in this. Then comes the economics. The essentials are obviously cost effective. Why? Because there are millions of people who get this medicine. So the company says, of course, we are able to recover the costs and we can provide this at an inexpensive price or a cheaper price. But the orphan drugs are only for a niche market, very small market, and they're not able to recover the costs. So they are priced absolutely high. So a little difference between the US and EU. I won't take much time on this because it's all there. It's online. You can go ahead. But the major difference between the US and EU market is the exclusivity. Once a drug gets approved, it needs an exclusivity, which means no other company can bring in the same drug until this exclusivity expires. So US has it for 7 years. As per their calculation, it takes at least 7 years in the orphan drug space for the costs to get recovered by the company, and and then they would allow other companies to make this molecule. In EU, it is 10 years. Let's get to the market. What is the market like? So what so far, let me recap what we have seen. We have seen there are 7,000 rare diseases which have really difficult names and which have really difficult pathophysiology. It takes years to even understand that a person has a rare disease, or sometimes it takes just a few days once the child is born, and the child is born with a rare disease. So those are genetic ones. But what happens once research is done and a molecule, a modifying disease modifying therapy is brought into the market? It commands high prices, right? And like in this graph, you can see from 2000, it was just a $20 billion per year industry. It is almost going to cross $200 billion per year industry in the next 3 to 5 years. Right now, the average, the per year sales of these orphan drugs worldwide is approximately $150 billion. Average cost per patient per year. Well, this has always been, $100,000 per year per patient, and it has increased to $140,000 per year per patient. A few top selling orphan drugs and the companies who are enjoying this monopoly and making a lot of money out of it are shown here. And I will just give you an example of Revlimid. It is going to be the top brand for the next few years, and it is from Celgene. You can see how the number of patients, which is just 40,000, that are going to take Revlimid, are paying $100,000, and if you multiply this, you get $4 billion, right? So maybe next year they can increase the price of the drug, or maybe the number of patients can increase in the next few years who are going to take this medication. And if you just multiply the average cost per patient and the number of patients, you can get the sales. So this is just 4.4 billion dollars of sales in the US. I'm not even talking about the rest of the world. Similarly, there are so many medicines that these are the orphan drugs which have very small population to treat. The prescription drug sales in 2022, you can see what companies are going to be the market leaders in the orphan drug space. Let me mention this. This is not the total sales, it is just the orphan drug sales. So you can see Celgene is again a market leader, and we see the big names: Novartis, Roche, BMS, Johnson and Johnson. Everybody is into rare diseases market. They have started exploiting, or they've started using the system where they can uh, use the research and development incentives and produce medicines that help the rare disease patients, but they also command high prices. We'll take a small case study when, so far I have defined what a rare disease is, what kind of prices they charge for a rare disease uh, therapy. Well, there's a small case study, and it's a fairly common disease, cystic fibrosis. It is an autosomal recessive disease, so the chances of a child being born with this disease is 25%. And let's say there's a parent, and the parent has never been affected by the disease but has a carrier gene. If this carrier gene goes to to the child, to the progeny, and from both the parents, the child is diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. And you might have heard people saying that my child is salty, the skin, when the parents kiss their child, the child's skin is salty. So this is the first sign of this disease called cystic fibrosis, where the body secretions are salty at the surface, and this affects the lungs inside and the digestive system. And within a few years, the the lungs and the digestive systems, the mucus becomes thick, and it attracts microorganisms. Slowly there's blockage, and at the end, the life expectancy decreases. So it used to be age 10. The life expectancy of this disease used to be just 10 years. But now, as you see, that it has been increased to 35 to 40 years of age. The total population around the world, this is one of the diseases which occurs in only Caucasian population. So you'll see cases in US where they are working, where they are developing the drug, in Europe where they're developing the drug, in Australia. These countries are majorly into the development of cystic fibrosis medications. So what medications? How did it begin? In 2012, before 2012, there used to be treatment for lungs, specific treatment for lungs, where you give mucolytics just to clear the mucus. You give enzymes and vitamins to the patients, uh, because there's a lot of secretions. Everything gets excreted. There's no absorption of these vitamins and enzymes, and slowly and steadily the patients become thin. They are not able to gain weight at all. But since the orphan drugs started coming in 2012, we saw Kaleido, and it took care of 10% of these people, and 10% of this population was able to get treated, and slowly the disease progression, the disease progression has slowed down. I wouldn't say that this is a therapy that will eradicate the disease, but it will definitely slow down the progression, which means the child can lead a normal life for at least, and grow up like normal people for at least 30 to 40 years. And then after a certain time, the lungs, and nothing can help the cystic fibrosis patients. They can go for a lung transplant. But this is a really life-threatening disease, and it ends up in a sad way. So after Kaleido, I would say there's Orkambi, which came in around 2014 and 15, 3 years later. And it took care of 50% of the patients. And now, recently, one drug has been approved by FDA, Simdeco, which will take care of another 20 to 30%. So maybe by 2020, there'll be 80% people who would be able to benefit from the last 15 years of research, from the last 15 years of development of these drugs. And now we have a proper treatment. Well, like I said, there is going to be a cost associated with such a treatment. Whenever you find a cure, whenever you find a way to improve the life quality of life, there has to be a huge payment across done, and this is approximately 300,000 per patient per year. So if you want to multiply this with 100,000 patients, 300,000 patients into 100,000, and this is just 1 year. So this is how much a company can uh, can earn when they find out a cure and they get it approved by FDA and EMA, right? Well, this is just one disease that I talked about. There are a lot of other rare diseases where research is going on. There are at least 40 to 50 orphan drugs that were approved in 1 year in the last year. So this is how fast the things are moving, and the main aim of presentation here would be, to make you guys aware of this space, that this orphan drug development space, where there's a lot of advancement, there's a lot of scope, and you just you don't have to be uh, focused on one rare disease. There's a group of rare diseases which could be focused on together. So this is one of the reasons why I learn about these rare diseases, to help those who have not been who have been neglected for years, because first, the companies don't get the return on investment, because the number of people who will get treated is very few, so they don't get a lot of money back for the medication. But again, with the approval process, with the regulatory process, the government has started to realize that they could help and make these payments, and they've started approving this drug, and they've started reimbursing this drug for the patients who are suffering. So it has been a journey of like 20 years. There's been a lot of development in this field. So I'll just summarize a few things about rare disease development, orphan drug development, and rare diseases. There are at least 7,000. Just remember that, and they are presenting a huge opportunity by the lack of effective treatment options that we have right now. Then there is a low threshold for entry of new products. What I mean by this is, once a company launches an effective product for a rare disease, there is at least 7 years in US and at least 10 years in Europe that no other company can enter with the same product. So there is a huge opportunity for the research and development companies, for the production companies, and for the people who want to do research in this field. And then there's engaged physicians and well documented patient registries that we do need to improvise on. We need to find these patients, we need to document them, and we need to talk to the physicians. So I am talking about the pharmacist's role right now, how we can help. Then the tolerance of high price points due to low patient number. This is some opportunity, of course. Well, also there needs a development of framework to assess orphan diseases and niche markets. There is a need for clinical trials to be developed and clinical trial endpoints to be developed. Need to gather insight into the feasibility and commercial opportunity for potential indications. Need to tap into the growing area and create ways for pharmacists to get involved with the patients and understand the patients, understand the disease, and start researching on them. If we start now, it will take a lot of years. It takes 5 to 10 years for a drug development process. It's a billions of dollars worth product. Then we need to influence the policymakers. We need to try to bring the prices down somehow and help the government, take help from the government rather, right? So I would kind of close my presentation right now and start taking the questions before I just finish in the next 10 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. I would like to take questions right now if there's any.
Thank you very much.
That's your food for thought. Expensive therapies, a bargain in disguise. Exciting times, but also expensive times. What is the market potential? It's a lot, but is it
For nice
opportunity
presentation.
or an obstacle?
Since we're waiting for the questions of our participants, I have one question, and it is how can we motivate and how can health systems motivate pharmaceutical companies to develop orphan drugs, since they're pretty expensive and nobody wants to pay few billions dollars for just like few people. So how can you motivate the pharmaceutical companies to develop these drugs? And also some countries have problems when you register the orphan drug. How can you motivate health systems to buy them and to pay them? Because some countries simply don't want to afford these drugs because they're too expensive and they just like decline to buy them. So how can we motivate all the participants in health systems to develop these rare diseases?
Great question. Thank you. Yeah, and it is a question that sums up a lot of things perfectly because that's the whole point of having these policies and having the system, regulatory system across. So I'll start answering how can you motivate the research and development, the industry, right? We need to find out the patient population first, right? And we need to inform the R&Ds that this is the potential of a drug. If launched for such an indication, you will be able to generate the returns on investment. This is something we can do from our side. And what the government has already been doing it, at least FDA that I know of, what they have been doing it, they have given incentives. There is a lot of tax rebates that a company who's working in the orphan drug space, they get a lot of tax incentives. They don't need to pay for the application, and NDA application a fee is waived off, which is somewhere in billions of dollars. And there are more incentives like 7 years of exclusivity where you cannot bring in a drug if someone has already brought it. So these are some things that have already been brought in. Again, I would say we need to find patient registries. We need to better diagnose the patients and pool them together and propose to the R&D that this is the potential, and if you are interested, this should be a win-win. It will also benefit the patients as well as you. So second point that you asked is how can the regulatory authorities can help. Like I said, there needs to be more incentives that need to be given to the companies so that the costs do not come down to the patients. The research and development industry should be able to recover the costs somehow. That's the only way to be able to bring in these drugs at an affordable price. And this is an argument that is going on right now. And people are speculating that, you need to charge, they can charge a lot of money from the patients because they are giving a better quality life to the patient. And if a patient gets improved, if the patient can function normally, they can go and get good jobs, they can do things on their own, and this would increase the quality of life of the patient. And it is somehow, you know, hypothesized that the price is fine. So
Thank
I
you
hope
very
I
much.
could answer your question.
You answered my question.
Like I said,
And we also
in
have
two
next
parts.
question
There's
from
both
my
parts.
colleague Marin,
In
and
what
he's
organ
asking,
it is. Like.
what can regulatory authorities do in order to generate need for lower investments in orphan drug development and eventually cause prices to drop, to decrease?
Yeah, Marin, thank you for the question. I say that regulatory authorities uh, cannot help in lowering the R&D cost. The R&D cost will always be there. If you want to produce quality medicines, there has to be a lot of investment. There are 100 to 200 molecules that they test for years and then they come up with one molecule. And I'm talking about one lab right now. So the only way the regulatory authorities can help is like they've already done by giving tax benefits, by giving exclusivities where the developer has the rights to sell and have a monopoly. And this is the best way that we have seen so far. For years now, it has been working well. For years, it has been seen that the things are going well. But everybody is still questioning the cost of the drug, the eventual prices, how can they come down? I don't know. Ask your government. I can take support from philanthropist organizations. I can request uh, social media campaigns. We have seen things going on like this. I just saw Robert Downey Jr. doing something like this for a rare disease. And we remember the bucket challenge, ALS, ALS challenge. How many of us did it? We didn't even know what it is for, but it was for a specific rare disease
Yes,
where
I
they
think
started
that Marin is
funding
pleased.
the research
And we
by
have the
money from
one
people
more
like us.
question.
And
It will
in
be the
any
last one.
way, I would like
And
to,
Giovanni
and I hope I
asked
answered your
which
question.
countries are helping the most in this. And by countries, he means governments. And he thanks you in advance.
All right. Yeah, I have seen that the biggest markets, I mean, the countries are uh, US, then we have UK, you have Germany, France. These are the big countries that have been working, and Australia as well. And then there's Japan. So the governments that are trying, I mean, it depends on the country, of course. US doesn't have any involvement from the government. The companies are independent. They they do not get interference from the government. But it depends on other countries like UK. So the UK has a system, the HTA system, Once the drug gets approved, it has to go through NICE, and the NICE will then decide that the drug, what the price of the drug could be. And EU has,
Thank you.
after the EMA approval, if most of it will.
Yeah, he said thank you. I would also like to
Do I
thank
need
you
to
for
answer
this
more,
amazing
or
lecture.
do
I
like
think
take
it's
my time?
very useful, especially for people who are
Thank you.
interested in R&D and orphan drugs. And really thank you. We all enjoyed it.
Perfect.
And our next lecture will be presented by my
Yep.
colleague Eva. Thank you.